Hello and welcome, foolish mortals. Or instead, I should say, viewer beware, you're in for a scare. For the longest time, Goosebumps was its own entity that was tied to Scholastic instead of Disney. But when I was figuring out what Halloween/horror-centric games I wanted to cover, I figured this would still be applicable due to not only the series that's currently on Disney Plus, as well as a brand new season that's upcoming early next year, but also because they had a weird show in the 90s over at then called MGM Studios.
You look almost lifelike.
Hey, Slappy, what are you doing here? What did you do to those kids?
What did I do to them?
This was such a weird concept that I wish I could have experienced. So yes, Goosebumps is technically a part of the Disney bubble, although again, the version of the game that I'm talking about is from 2015, and it's based on the film that was released under Columbia Pictures, which is Sony. However, again, because Goosebumps is currently featured within Disney, I'm counting it. Plus, it's nice to talk about something more unique instead of Haunted Mansion and Nightmare Before Christmas, for example, although we all know how much I love both of those stories. There's been several Goosebumps games made over the years, both for the PC and on other various consoles, and this is one of the newer ones, although it's insane to realize it's almost a decade old. It's a visual novel point-and-click adventure game where you're the main character of the story. You can choose between playing as a girl or a boy, and once you enter your name, which is very limited characters-wise. I think they only allow you 7 letters, which is so little. I always feel bad for people who have longer names like Cleopatra, Sebastian, or Samantha.
Samantha? I don't even know it's Samantha.
And they don't want to shorten it. Goosebumps? That's name discrimination. Anyways, moving on, the first scene begins as 2 delivery drivers are packing up boxes to move in the middle of the night. After hearing some strange noises, they check out what's going on, only to be greeted by Slappy, the haunted ventriloquist dummy mastermind that's always behind all the monsters in the Goosebumps universe. See, the pun and irony here is that because he's the dummy, normally he'd always be the one being controlled by someone else, but instead he's the one pulling the strings with all of the monsters. We fade to black as it cuts to the next day, where now we're in control of our character, who's at school, yet left their phone in the locker, so they have to go back to retrieve it. From then, it's up to the player to figure out where to go, depending on the clues given between the phone calls and the dialogue on the screen. There's a few locations that you can travel between: your school, the woods, the neighborhood you live in, your house, and the mall. Each of the locations taking up a good amount of time per section, according to the guide I found. Because yes, even though this is technically a children's game, this was challenging. And to be completely honest, I wanted to focus on the narrative of this game, and therefore didn't want to waste too much time trying to figure out what to do once I got stuck, so I appreciated all of the walkthrough guides available for this game. And it's nice to also know that there was a lot of people that posted on message boards how challenging and nonsensical at times this game was. But we'll come back to why in a bit. The guide broke this game down to 3 sections. The first one focuses on the journey through the woods back into your neighborhood, slowly realizing that weird things are going on, but not enough to cause insane concern just yet. Part 2 is once you encounter your house. Well, it's your house, but it's not your house. No, the address is correct, but instead, the house that you live in has been turned into Dead House from Welcome to Dead House. The first Goosebumps video I ever watched back when it was shown to me and my fellow classmates in elementary school. Fun fact, I already had discovered my bat and vampire obsession at this time, so I loved the episode since they're all vampires, even though it's never stated as such. However, once you're in the house, there's no vampires, unfortunately. Instead, it's a continuation of all the Goosebumps stories as different references. That's the one thing I can really appreciate about this game. It's a true Easter egg hunt for all the references scattered around that are based on all the stories from the series. However, in the same light, this is also what makes this game insanely challenging. You can't be a casual fan to play this game. You need to live and breathe Goosebumps to be able to beat this game on its own. It's a logic-based puzzle game for most of the tasks, and there's some things that make sense, but most of the steps you need to take from the massive inventory that you collect throughout this game won't be easy to figure out unless you know the lore from all the books. Add on the addition of being attacked by the monsters and dying, because that can happen a lot. Thankfully, you can retry and go back to your last checkpoint. Which, PSA, if you haven't played a game like this, save your game a lot and very often. There's also a few mini challenges within this game that, again, If I didn't have the walkthrough guide, I wouldn't have made it far at all. One example is the dark room. There's a dark room where you can develop a few photos that you need in order to move on to the next task. This is also where I'd like to address again as a reminder. This game was released recently in 2015. Smartphones have been around for almost a decade by this point. Kids will not know what this is or how to do this correctly. In order to complete this, you need to wait a minute between each step in developing a photo. And if you miss a step or leave it in too long or too short, you have to start over. It's stuff like this that makes this game impossible and awful. And I say that as a person that loves photography. I will admit that I don't have practical knowledge of analog development at this point. Obviously, it's very important and needs to stay relevant, but Goosebumps, this is not the time to teach it. A little later, there's another puzzle with specific chess pieces. Again, kids will most likely not know how to do this correctly. My family tried to teach me how to play chess when I was younger, and I couldn't get that information to stay. Checkers, on the other hand, I am fantastic at. If you do end up figuring out all the random tasks, challenges, and puzzles, you're able to move on to the final act, part 3, where it mainly takes place between your house and the mall. So far, this game also has been decently relaxing. Of course, there's spooky things everywhere, but you're able to go at your own pace to progress throughout the game. Once you get into the mall, that all changes. You're greeted by this gym rat robot security guard who will kill you if he spots you sneaking around. This element just made things so much more stressful. There's various tasks to complete in time on top of sneaking around and making sure the robot doesn't stumble upon you. But finally, you're able to unlock the entrance to a bookstore where you come upon a dummy that's not Slappy, but don't worry, Slappy still pops out and reveals his plan to you. The goal here is to distract him enough for R.L. Stine to pop over and stop Slappy's evil plan from happening. And that's basically the game. Once R.L. Stine successfully gets Slappy back into his book, the epilogue begins, where you end up helping Stine around town to capture the rest of the monsters and get them all locked away. He continues to move on to his next destination, and you go back to your normal mundane adolescent life. Overall, the art style and narrative is nice. There were moments where I actually laughed at the clever jokes, specifically this moment. I also did get a tiny jump scare once when Slappy popped up on the TV, so this would be a thrilling game for kids to play. A nice, safe introduction to horror games, but of course they would need to be a true Goosebumps fan to really enjoy and be able to complete it, as mentioned before. This is a game for the true Goosebumps fans, so it's a good thing that there's a few more older and right now abandoned, more casual Goosebumps games to enjoy besides this one, but that's a graveyard dig for another video. One more thing I'll mention before we close the chapter. I got to go to New York Comic Con over the weekend, and not only did they have a panel for the new season of Goosebumps that's coming on Disney+, and they also had R.L. Stine signing his new book series, not Goosebumps related, and they also had one of the original illustrators of Goosebumps, Tim Jacobus. They had prints for sale as well, so I ended up getting this one, which I still need to frame. And this one I got is Welcome to Horrorland, because I figured this is still really cute in terms of illustration. He had a lot, which was so cool, especially for the fact that I've been covering Goosebumps research-wise for this video. And this is nostalgia for me as a 90s kid. I really liked the Dead House one as well. That was an option. But I figured if you weren't familiar with Goosebumps, it would just be a random house. So at least this one had some more information with Horrorland that fit in. And I love that guy's autograph. This was 20 bucks. It was fantastic. Goosebumps has had a lot of changes over the years, but I'm very happy that it's still relevant. And so far, Disney has done a good job letting the series mature. This might have been one semi-rule breaker game to talk about, but Goosebumps still has enough connections to Disney to discuss further in the future. So now I turn it over to you. Were you a Goosebumps fan? Are you excited that it's now a part of the Disney family? Let me know below. And until then, as always, I hope you have a magical day, and I will see you real soon.